Welcome everybody, Grandmaster Christian Sabo here, and I will give you an e4 repertoire for club players. White plays e4, and I will show everything here which black can play. Let's start immediately with alternative openings. We call it like weaker sidelines. Which is not coming in the center, like not e5, not c5, not d5, something very strange like b6, a6, for example g5. Let's start with this g5. Of course it's not a good move. Just recently in a Title Tuesday tournament, world champion Magnus Carlsen also moved this with black, so that was the reason why I put this move also, otherwise I don't want to show this at all. Okay, g5 is of course not a good move, it was a blitz move. d4, white continued to gain the center. h6, knight c3, d6, normal developing moves with white, bishop e3, knight c6, and as black is more undeveloped and he weakening himself with this g5, h6, white can immediately start to attack his structure, so he played immediately h4, which is actually a good move, which try to attack him as much as possible, and immediately, so quickly, while he is coming out with other pieces also. g4. Yeah, he closed, because if he even opens, that is even worse. Takes, rook takes, or maybe we can take later also. But okay, let's say takes, and h6 pawn is a bit weak also. Weakness, and yeah, white has several options. Maybe even d5 is even more stronger. So g4 happened in the game, knight g2, knight f6, queen d2. Of course, prepare for the long castle, a6, long castle. That is a very important thing mentally in this kind of positions. If we play, for example, e4 and the opponent play a very strange move, like let's say h6, g5 or anything, we don't have to be so nervous or something like that for that, oh, I have to punish immediately and I have to win very quickly. Just play calm also, because if you have a normal position and the g5, for example, or those moves, not logical, so he will have several problems with that later on. Bishop g7, king b1, very normal moves, very typical when white plays long castle, putting the king to b1, b5, knight g3, b4, and knight d5, just jump into the center, h5. Not really easy to continue the development for black, because he already weakened himself. So for example here he can't castle because the h6 pawn is hanging, so he has to do something. White's previous move, by the way, the knight g3 has protected the e4, so that's why after b4 knight d5 is not a problem, because it's completely protected there. h5, knight takes b4, knight takes b4, queen b4, so he just took the pawn. It's a good question why he didn't protect, because if he would protect with, for example, let's say rook b8, probably his problem is that knight takes f6, bishop takes f6, and either, or maybe knight h5 or even d5 we have also, let's say knight h5, and black is immediately in trouble on that side. bishop can't escape. So that was the reason why after knight d5, when he's already threatening with this knight takes f6 thing, he played h5. Knight takes b4, knight b4, queen b4, a5. Queen a4 check. Not clear what is the compensation for the pawn. Bishop d7, bishop b5, rook b8, bishop d7, queen d7, and exchange everything, and knight f5, and white had a pawn up and later managed to win, even in the blitz game also. So, okay, that was, I think, enough about this first g5. Just wanted to show something. Let's see, for example, a6. These are kind of extravagant moves. d4, b5, of course, these are not really good. Knight f3, bishop b7, bishop d3. This is the easiest way to protect the e4 pawn with the bishop, because knight c3 always can met by pawn b4, and we have some problems on e4. So bishop d3 is more logical and wait with the knight move. e6, and he plays, and the improvement is c3 here, but I'm sure this is not the only move, so there are many other continuation like castle here, which is completely normal and acceptable. c3 is good because he connects his pawns and he has a good center there, so it's completely fine and acceptable. Knight f6, e5, yes, immediately controlling the center. Knight d5, and a4. So before castling, white already tries to attack black's b5 pawn, a little bit similar like in the previous variation on the g5. When the pawn was on g5, then he started to attack with h4. Now the pawn is on b5, he starts to attack with a4. c5, dc5. Yeah, it's a good question, take it or keeping on d4, but the most important is our e5 pawn, which gains some space, and also he has problems on b5. Bishop takes c5, castle, knight c6. It's interesting they don't take on b5 yet. What is the reason? But yeah, if a takes b5 now, it would be still early. A takes a, they okay, exchange the rooks. But bishop takes b5 is not working yet because of the nice tactical motif by okay, not so tactical, the queen b6. Bishop takes f2 tactical motif is still not working because king f2, queen b6 check, knight d4, and he protected the b5 bishop. So queen b6, and now it's a double attack, and now he's in kind of trouble. Let's say queen e2 he protects, but it didn't protect. Also bishop f2, queen takes b5 is fine, and black is okay. Yeah, and there is no any other way. Knight d4 is losing a piece here because bishop takes d4. So yeah, this is just good. Okay, so that's why he played castle, didn't rush anywhere, knight c6, but still now also didn't take. What can be the reason? Let's see. If a takes b5, a takes b5, rook takes a8, maybe he takes back with the queen, bishop takes b5, looks winning a pawn, but yeah, something queen b8, take pressure on e5. Probably we can win the pawn, but maybe a little pressure, yes, not clear. I think this was also completely possible. Yeah, it was possible. Okay, let's see knight bd2. This is also normal. Yeah, because now knight e4 is also coming as well. So bishop e7 went back, and now he already took the pawn. Now if there is no any counterplay, then white is clearly better with his pawn up. So there is no counterplay at all. Okay, let's say this is okay about the a6, and let's see still the b6. These three moves I want to show about this very strange first moves. d4, bishop b7, and bishop d3. I also prefer this setup when we protect with the bishop the e4 pawn, because in case of knight c3, which is the most natural move because developing with the knight, black's idea is playing e6 followed by bishop b4 and the quick pressure to the e4 pawn because he pinned the c3 knight. So bishop d3 is just easier, e6 and knight f3, so I don't come out with the b1 knight to c3 simply. And okay, c5. Black tries to attack the center. Let's see how about, for example, knight f6. Then queen e2, d5. Also not knight c3 because of bishop b4. Also the queen e2. Let's protect with the queen, and I don't allow any pin, any unpleasant pressure to my position. d5, e5, knight fd7. And now what can we see here? This is called French pawn structure because of the e6, d5, and white has this d4, e5. In this variation, black's usual problem is on the king side. So White has a quick attack there, like knight g5 immediately, instead of the development we already come here, because if the knight is not on f6, then white has a quick pressure there, because this knight doesn't protect the h7 square, allows the queen f3 or queen h5. From here it has so many controlling square for the knight, but thanks for this e5, black cannot go there and he's in some trouble. Bishop e7, for example, queen g4, but this is not the only one. h5, f3 is also completely okay. And black's position is hard. No castling, because hanging on h7. Knight is threatening to jump somewhere, then weak the g7. So his situation is not easy at all. Okay, alright, let's go back. This was the knight f6. Let's see how about the c5 if he doesn't come out with the pieces yet, but try to attack the center. Of course, if he would play d5, we also play e5 and we reach a similar structure. Okay, the knight is not on d7, but on g8 from where it is going to e7. Also, the situation is similar a little bit. So c5 and d5. Probably this is the best move here. However, c3 is also not bad to protect the center, so it's also an option. But d5 is a great way, because we can say that this move is that which punish the opponent, because I've gained some space and block his b7 bishop. The question is that, of course, what about if he captures? e5 and bishop takes d5. Of course, if he doesn't take, for example, let's say knight f6, then I can protect with c4 and he's in trouble immediately because the bishop is completely closed. So we will play castle, knight c3, let's say bishop f4, and the position is completely good for white. Space advantage thanks for the d5 pawn, so black situation is just hard here. So bishop takes d5. Now white sacrificed the pawn, but he gains some space and a little bit go forward quickly, like knight c3, bishop e6. Until this, by the way, we follow Nihal Makshodlo game, and here white should have played bishop f4. It is a very normal development from where I control the b8 h2 diagonal and also threatening many times with knight b5. So black has to play a6. So for example, if he would play a knight f6 instead, maybe after knight b5 he would have difficulties already. Maybe even if not immediately, maybe if castle first is also a possibility, or queen e2 and then prepare for long castle, but I think the immediate knight b5 is also strong, and we have a strong attack and pressure on the c7 and d6 squares. So if black wants to be safe, he should play this a6 move. Queen e2, knight f6, and long castle. Bishop e7. Development. Okay, we couldn't punish him immediately, like for example win back a piece or something like that, but we have pressure. We have pressure there. b5 and g4. Yes, because if he would play castle instead of b5, his idea was that always something c4 or b4 sometimes, but now maybe I will have a quick bishop e4 or bishop c4, or immediately g4 again. Probably this g4 is the easiest if I don't want to go in any special motif, because g4 g5 is a very handle attack. For example, if he plays d6, then to attack the knight, if he would go with the knight, then the g4 pawn would be hanging. But of course we continue with g5, and he cannot take the e5 knight because g takes f6 first, and then with bishop takes h7 we win the d8 queen. So it's simply not working. So castle g4. So that's why b5, g4 also. We simply go here and b4. Yes, if castle, the story is same. I can come with g5, knight e8, and now it's a very typical motif we will see here, when also his problem is that the knight is not on f6. So the queen is going to e4, and suddenly it's a double attack because mating set on h7 and the rook is hanging on a8. Very important and typical motif. So if you are black, always be careful about that. The knight should be on f6 and protect the h7 and the e4 square also, because if the knight leaves the center, white has immediately a lot of extra options. Okay, so g4, b4. That's why knight e4, of course, we jump into the center. Knight d5, bishop g3, knight c6, knight takes c6, d takes c6, and after f4, without any hesitation, we can say white is clearly better. Doesn't matter the pawn down, because white has a huge development advantage and a huge initiative, because f5 will come. So for example, let's say castle. Then we continue with f5. The bishop goes back to, for example, c8. And then, even if I don't win anything back, I can come with h4 and start to attack, because I have space advantage also. So this is much more than a simple compensation. Yeah, so actually that's all. If I want to do a conclusion about the weak sidelines, I can say that if white plays precisely with normal developing moves, his position will be obviously better without any problem. But of course, this is good if we prepared about all, because ourselves we can't find this just so easily.